Welcome to Ole Walls House. It's me. It's your man. It's your main man. It's Ole Walls, and I'm back with you. Episode 166 coming your way. Got a fun show today. Had a guest on, Jeff Slanovec. We covered a wide range of topics. Wide range, righty? Jeff and I covered a wide range of topics. We talked a little golf. We talked some college basketball, previewed the players. So we had a real fun conversation. Then I'm going to talk about a bunch of other stuff, hockey, football, a little more college basketball, my passing thoughts. So real fun show here coming up. So before we do that, just want to say thank you to everybody. Thank you so much. Appreciate the support. Appreciate the watches, the listens. You know the deal. If you could, please rate, review, comment, subscribe. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Pods, Amazon Pods, YouTube. So go there, check us out, subscribe. That's the big one. Not enough subscribers, so we need more of you guys to subscribe. Don't forget about my buddy MJ and the Full Range Podcast. You can find him on Spotify at the Full Range Podcast or on the Ole Walls House YouTube page. So without any further ado, let's dive in. Okie doke. Back this week, friend of the program, the one, the only, Jeff Slanovec. Jeff, how you doing today, pal?
All good. All good. It's championship week. Means we're a week away from bracket release. Means we're a week away from the best 4 days maybe in all of sports, followed by some sad days when you realize that's gone.
It gets we're kind of in like this, we're actually kind of in like a little bit of a dark period now. Like there is college basketball going, but like post Super Bowl to March Madness gets a little weird. At least coming out of March Madness, you catch some baseball, but like, yeah, it gets weird then too. So like we're in this weird stretch of sports where there's no football, and after March Madness, you at least get NHL and NBA playoffs going too for a little something that could tickle your fancy. But yeah, it's a weird part of the sports schedule with the football hangover going on. So
yeah, it's a wild 2 weeks. You get all these. I don't think it necessarily starts today, but I think tomorrow all the Power 5 conference tournaments start, and you get afternoon basketball Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You get those couple straggling conferences. I can think of the Big Ten clearly being one that usually plays at like 2 o'clock or 12 o'clock on Sunday. And then you get the March Madness Thursday and Friday. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh man, where'd all the basketball go?
Yeah, it's gone forever.
There'll definitely be texts in our group chat on Saturday when we wake up expecting basketball all day, and there's 2 games that start before 5 o'clock, and then 6 games that get slammed into a 4-hour window.
Yeah, let's get that out of the way. That is the most absurd scheduling of all time, is that Thursday, Friday, they just start flooding you with basketball at noon. Yeah. And then for some unknown reason on Saturday, instead of like pacing it out, you're right. There's like the game that starts at 2. There's a game that starts at like 4 or 5.
There's the second one at that site. It's like 1:30 and then 30 minutes after that one.
Yep.
And then it's just like dinner and beyond.
Yeah. It's absurd because there's 16 games a day on Thursday, Friday. And then 8. Saturday, Sunday, there's going to be 8. And 6 of them start at like 6 o'clock or later.
Yeah. There's a ridiculous one every year on Sunday. That's like 9:40 at night on Sunday. Yeah. That literally could start at 7:40, and you just push everything up, and everyone would be happy. It's not like it's competing with anything, but yeah, and then you really finish there, and it's like, oh man, like basketball's kind of done.
Yeah.
But yeah, exciting time.
Yeah, we'll get to some basketball here in a minute, but let's start with the Arnold Palmer this week. Russell Henley comes out and kind of struggles through the front 9 a little bit, but then chases down Colin Morikawa on the back 9. And maybe the shot of the tournament we don't even quite see. I know as the resident coverage expert in our group chats, how'd you feel about that?
I mean, if you're surprised, then you haven't been listening to this podcast when I've been on. And no, and it really underscored what was a really, really good coverage week for the tournament. I know they made it very, very known that MasterCard was going to step up as one of the sponsors of the tournament, and take a bunch of the commercial breaks out and give us more golf. And I thought it was an enjoyable watch. I just don't really understand how you missed that. And it almost made, I happened to be playing golf yesterday, so I didn't watch a lot of the beginning, and I happened to turn it on as the chip was rolling. And I was like, oh, it must have just missed because I just turned it on. And no, that's how everybody saw it, which is wild because, there were conflicting reports about whether the chip was easy or not. I don't know any chip on 16 going in that direction. It's very easy at Bay Hill. But if you didn't get a chance to kind of set that up, and it probably rolls off the green if it doesn't hit the stick, right? Like, especially at the speed it was going at. And if you're a producer of that event, you have to know that whether he makes that chip or not, that chip's probably determining whether the tournament goes in one direction or another, right? He had a much more likely up and down or a chance at up and down, and Morikawa hadn't obviously gone for the green in 2 and had 25 feet or whatever it was. You have to at least get us to that chip.
Right. I was so surprised. I was so surprised because I was like, oh, they're going to commercial. Henley'd hit, Morikawa would hit. I'm like, they'll come back. They'll set up the chip. Like, we're going to see him kind of stand over, maybe he walks out onto the green to try and get a read. And then all of a sudden, it's like, bam, chip's in. I'm like, wait a second. Like, I was kind of zoned out during the commercial, like scrolling through Twitter. I'm like, did I miss them? I literally rewound it back into the commercial. And I was like, oh, no, this is just what they did. Like, the error is not that, like, oh, we missed it by like a couple of seconds. It's like the error is that you missed it by like a minute or two. Like, you should have been setting the chip up. Like you said, that's maybe the deciding factor in how those guys play the last 2 holes, because like 17 and 18 are so brutal. Mm-hmm. Like, if it's tied going into that, it affects somebody one way or another, because you're not really thinking Henley's going to make that chip. But hey, if he can make birdie and Morikawa doesn't, all of a sudden we're tied going into 17 and 18 instead of Morikawa having a 1-shot lead. Like, that really affects how those guys are going to play. And you think they'd really be setting that up. And you got, I think, who is one of the better on-course reporters in Bones, like, out there with that group to do it. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, nah, we're good. We're just going to come back right before he hits it. Like, that was the decision.
Yeah, it was bizarre. And I think this is one of the things where I guess it really depends on what your view is on it. I'm not really somebody who thinks that the job of coverage is to tell us when shots happened, right? So, like, if you make a producer error and you hold on to one extra commercial and you don't get to lead in the way you want to, well, then just pretend that the shot happened 30 seconds later, right? Like, come back and give us 30 seconds of talk about it and then show us the shot. And if we're behind 30 seconds because some guy in a trailer made a mistake about giving Rolex an extra 30-second spot, so be it, right? But
you're going to be able to make that up on the last 2 holes with 4 guys on the golf course.
Right, for sure. Or don't show us somebody who's 3 shots back's putt that we need 4 balls to go in the water for that putt to actually matter, right? Like,
we don't need to see Corey Connors trying to get up and down on 18. It doesn't matter.
And maybe if you want to see Corey Connors, that's fine. But, like, I know they showed Jason Day putting on 18. Oh, well, Day was in it until he messed up 16. Well, that's great, but he's out of it now. So fill in the commercial spot there. He lost his chance. Instead, we barely see Henley. But, I mean, it's hard to say how important that chip is for his career. Kind of been known loser. And honestly, it was a leaderboard filled of kind of known losers the last couple of years. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't really surprise me that it was kind of gagged away by a number of different people at different times, and Henley hit the 1 shot.
Yeah, it really is kind of an interesting leaderboard. And I wanted to talk a little bit about Henley. If you look at his career, dude's won 5 times on the tour. His first 3 wins came in 2013, 14, and 17. And he's always kind of been there-ish, it feels like. But all of a sudden, like, the last few weeks, it's been like his name's been up in the top of the leaderboard. And, he won the Honda before. He beat out Rory and Ryan Palmer and Russell Knox in a playoff. The Arnold Palmer is a good one. So he's got a couple of nice wins on his resume. Was on the President's Cup team last year. Mm-hmm. Is well on his way to being on the President's Cup, the Ryder Cup team this year. it's just a really interesting career to look at and just be like, this dude's kind of a grinder and like has got himself back from the wilderness. Like I said, not always known as a closer, but gritty all of a sudden of late. And then you compare that to what's going on with the guy he beat in Colin Morikawa. And I think you've got a real interesting kind of case study in what Morikawa is going through. Obviously, Morikawa jumps out and grabs those two early majors in his career, kind of in, the COVID major stretch there where we played 9 majors in 18 months.
Right.
But really, he's only won one tournament since.
He hasn't won in 4 years, I don't think.
He won the 2023 Zozo, which was played in October. So,
Never mind. So he's won once in 4 years, I think it is.
And if you want to count the Zozo as a big deal, I don't think anyone really is. So,
right.
For a guy that had won, a PGA, a WGC, and then the Open, and then really kind of lost his game, I think it was last year and a little bit the year before, he's bounced back and has been playing better, and his ball striking numbers are up. But there's been a couple of these similar to this past weekend where he gets in contention and just can't put his foot on the gas. He had a 2-shot lead with 5 holes to play, and then nothing.
Yeah,
just makes a bogey on 14, was kind of battling on the front 9, and then bogeys 14, pars 15 and 16, 17, and 18. And even on 17 and 18, I know they're not easy holes to just be like, hey, we're going for the pin. But you're down 1, and I know he's a cutter and he was lining up on the left side of the green, but it's at some point you kind of gotta go for it a little bit. I'm not saying you gotta start it out at the pin and just keep it there, but he felt like he was just hey, Russell Henley's gonna make a bogey. And I don't mean to knock Colin Morikawa because he's obviously a good player, but it's there are some worrisome tendencies, I guess you could say.
Yeah, so I think we'll start with Henley, right? I think Henley winning at a place like Bay Hill, having formerly won the Honda, I think it speaks to just what kind of a golfer he is, right? This 6 to 8 week stretch on tour is always going to be kind of, in my opinion, his bread and butter. He's always been known as a really good ball striker. He's always been known as a fairly accurate driver of the ball. But it feels like for the last 5 or 6 years, the distance thing probably impacted that, right? And before this PGA Live split, when you lost guys to Live like DJ and like Brooks and like Rahm, and you've lost some guys who had some real firepower, that it only takes one of those guys with firepower to have a week. And it doesn't matter how good you are. You finish second, you finish 9th, you finish 8th, right? Whatever it is. It's felt like Henley has been really close a number of times. I can think of Sony Open being a track that, well, that's a Russell Henley track, right? I can think of a Bay Hill or a Honda or a Cognizant last week or a Travelers or one of those where everybody's going to hit it to kind of the same spots on a lot of different holes, and the best wedge player and the best iron player and the best putter is going to win that week. That feels like Russell Henley. And it feels like it was a long time coming for him, I'm sure. I know he kind of said that after, it had been a really long time and winning's really, really hard. And honestly, some of these young guys make winning look really easy way too soon, Morikawa being one of them. But it kind of just, you're only a loser until you win, right? Yeah. And it does kind of feel like Morikawa might be getting to that. He was quoted after, I think, round 3 of saying it's the best his ball striker's felt since 2021. I do worry a little bit about the fact that he really only does want to work the ball one way. And it feels like when he's not hitting that baby cut, he doesn't have it. And I think that's the one thing, that 17 and 18 were perfect pins for the way he wants to hit the golf ball, right? But he's not going to draw it. And he only wants to cut it. And it feels like one of those has, especially when Henley goes first on 17 and he hits the ball in what I thought was a fairly standard par position, right? Just on that fringe. I didn't think he'd make it quite as difficult as he did. But then when you see him hit the ball straight down the middle on 18, and 18, once you're in the fairway, just becomes any other hole for those guys.
Yeah.
Right? Especially if you're Henley and you've got a one-shot lead, just hit it somewhere out to the left. Get your number somewhat right. Don't go long, and don't flare it short right. And the tournament's probably over. And for Colin to take the lines he did, both on 17 and 18, were a little confusing to me.
Yeah.
Given the position he was in.
There's one thing I wanted to say before, and then one thing that you made me think of when you're like, he only likes to hit the ball one way. He was, I don't remember what this quote was from or when exactly, but it was in the last couple of years where he's kind of been struggling. He's like, yeah, I'm hitting the ball on my line. It's just not cutting. And like you said, like when the ball doesn't cut for him, he kind of just goes away.
Yeah.
And so you saying it's like, I just automatically, that quote popped up in my head is that I'm starting where I want. The ball's just not cutting. And it's
right.
That's a little bit worrisome. Now, on the other side, like he's been putting himself into position to win again. And there's this thing in like golf is that, just take Scotty Scheffler, for example. Like he's out of
Xander Schauffele last year was in the same thing, right? He gagged away the players, which we're going to get to.
Yep. And so, you keep putting yourself in position. You're playing good golf. You think eventually chips are going to fall the right way, but like it's kind of the curse of playing good golf is that you get yourself up in the spotlight. And if you don't close, and traditionally on the PGA Tour, you don't close. Like that's just the numbers say that.
Yep.
It's kind of like the thing that like, yeah, you're your own worst nightmare because you play good and you get yourself into contention all the time. You're just statistically not going to win a bunch.
Right.
So there is that. It's that like when these guys get up into position, we're like, oh, we're worried about him. He can't close. Like it's just, we do need to always like pump the brakes a little bit and be like, hey, he keeps getting himself into position. That's something really, really to be said about that too.
Well, and he's one of those other guys, another guy like Justin Thomas has been doing the same thing for the last 6 or 8 months, right? Really ever since he was going through that really bad stretch, what was that, a year and a half ago, where he was begging to do everything he could to get on the Ryder Cup team.
Yep.
And he got on, but he probably didn't deserve to be on, right? But he was kind of doing that. I'm going to play every single week to prove to these guys that I'm working on my game and getting better. And it's been a while since that dude's won too, right?
Yep.
And he, again, just knocking on the door, and it's something every week, right? Whether the putter lets you down from inside of 10 feet or the irons are just a touch off, it feels like both of those guys are ripe to break through in a similar way that Henley is. But golf is so hard, man. And for every Scotty Scheffler there is who just goes and rides a heater for 7 or 8 months like he did last year, there's somebody else who gets hot for 4 weeks and never has it again that year, right?
Yeah.
And for those lesser guys, I think of like a Michael Kim right now, right? Like he's making himself millions of dollars in the next year or two because of what he's done the last 4 or 5 weeks.
He just made $1 million this week too.
That's what I mean. And he's a guy,
and he's just gotten himself into everything going forward. Like he's on the verge of getting into the Masters now. Yeah.
But there's no guarantee that you keep doing it, right? Because like you said, the minute one of those guys, whether it's a Morikawa or it's a JT, I'm looking at some other names on that list, like Shane Lowry kind of to me fits the same bill, right? Like how many times on these tight water-filled golf courses is he going to be in contention on a Saturday and a Sunday at a Valspar or at a Bay Hill and just finish 7th and make a ton of money and be like, the putt, the this.
Yeah, he absolutely just punted it away on Saturday.
Yeah, Fleetwood being another one of those guys, right, who's a name I'm excited to talk about for the players. Like, there's just a board of losers who they're going to start winning at some point, right? And these courses kind of just fit what they're trying to do as long as they don't get overpowered by somebody like a Rory, who has the ability to hit it long and straight and torch everybody.
Yeah, I think you said it a little bit with losing some of the guys to live, the Brooks, the Brysons, the Rahms, the dudes, a DJ, not so much anymore. I think he's kind of past it anyway, but like same archetype. Like the dudes that just can go out and just absolutely steal golf tournaments any week, anywhere. Like their talent level is just so high. Just losing like 4 or 5 of those guys kind of puts some of these other guys in light that kind of
No
like
doubt.
sneak their way up into it, and they make you feel like they're more in it than maybe they ever are. Like in reality, it's just interesting. Couple other things here. You mentioned Michael Kim. I mean, Michael Kim's been on an absolute heater, so glad you mentioned that. Sepp Straka opened the week with a 77 and ended up finishing just 4 shots back of the leader. He got hot. Don't love seeing him playing good golf again in a Ryder Cup year. Just seems like he's just going to kill us again. Corey Connors, just an all-time opportunity, just sitting right there for him and just left everything short, coming in, made one birdie.
Right? Another guy, right? Ball striker, questionable putter, right? Like
Yep.
any field like that. I think what you just said is so true. You lose the tour had 6 or 8 guys. Bryson was in them. Bryson, Rory, Rahm, DJ when he was in his prime, Brooks when he was in his prime. If they cared and played really well, it didn't really matter what the rest of the people did because they could hit it so far and so straight, and they all were good enough putters when they were playing well. That next group of people, and you're talking about Sepp Straka as a guy, like he's had a resurgence because there's more room for someone like him. Corey Connors has put himself in position a number of times now. Won, what did he win, the Canadian Open last year, was it?
Did he?
No, that was a different Canadian. But like those ball striking guys who hit it long enough and just need to see putts go in all have so much more of a chance now because of who's gone and how few of those top guys there are. Like JT doesn't overpower a golf course. Morikawa doesn't overpower a golf course. Xander maybe a little bit more than he did 2 years ago. But there's just less of those guys that you stand there and you go, oh man, like when they're good, right?
Yeah.
And it's sad to see what's happened to DJ because he was one of those dudes that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. I think he's the one example of when to live, didn't care. Like that was kind of the conversation about that was, like, oh, these guys are going to go, they're going to get their money. And most of them were old. And it was like DJ and then Rahm and like Rahm and Brooks seem fine. They seem to amp it back up when they get on the majors.
Rahm
DJ
also
just
cares
seems
over there. I don't think Rahm's finished outside the top 10 in live. And I know it's only 50-something players, but like top 10s for like 14 straight months.
That's something. I don't care how many players are in the field, right? Yeah, and then two other things here from the Arnold Palmer. Keegan Bradley with just a wild round goes out in 29, working his way towards maybe getting himself on the Ryder Cup team. He said he won't pick himself, but he keeps knocking down the door. He might sneak his way into contention. And then Scotty Scheffler loses 5.5 shots on the greens and finishes 7 back. So it feels like it feels like we're almost in that same spot where we were a little bit 2 years ago with Scotty, where it's like if he putts okay, he's in it. If he putts anything above average, he's going to win. And if he putts bad, he's going to T15.
And that's a scary, scary position for us as viewers, for us as fantasy golf players, for a lot of people. And they know it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the worst for fantasy golf because you're like, God, I just have to time up the week Scotty putts well. Like that's impossible. But okay. I think we're good on the Arnold Palmer unless you got anything else for that.
No.
I think we can probably run through this part kind of quickly. I don't think we need to spend a ton of time because it's such an interesting week on the PGA Tour, but the Players is this week. Another course in the same mold as Arnold Palmer, where a lot of guys, you kind of hit it to the same spot as everybody else. So it brings a lot of people in play. Like if you go back and look at who's won the Players, it's an interesting collection of people. I mean, you get your dudes, you get your Tigers, your Rorys, your JTs, but you get your Siwoo Kims, you get your Fred Funks, like guys like that too. Kevin Kisner has been involved coming down the stretch in
a number of times. A couple playoff losses, I think.
Yeah, I had him in fantasy one year when he lost in the playoffs, so that was always fun. Who do you like this week? Like looking at the board, Scotty and Rory are the two favorites, and then it's just a mix mash of, all the names you'd expect. Morikawa, Schauffele, Ludwig, JT, Hideki, Cantlay, Fleetwood, Lowry, Henley, Sungjae, Sepp Straka, Keegan. Like, where do you even go? Like, where do you even go to look to predict
you rattled off one name who's also part of that wheel of losers we talked about that we didn't talk about because he just shot himself completely out of Bay Hill last week. But that was Cantlay.
Mm-hmm.
Is another guy who just doesn't hit it long like some of the top guys, but iron player, ball striker, just never seems to put 4 rounds together until you don't need him to. I think every course on tour fits what Scottie Scheffler does, right?
Yeah.
Like he's fairly long. He drives it better than anybody that's not Rory, right? His irons are the best in the world for 18 straight months now or whatever they are. It's hard to say he's not.
He chips it well.
Right. Chips it well, makes putts sometimes, hits it close enough that he doesn't have to make all the putts, right? There are 4 par 5s out here, I think. Like it's not like he has to do it just by making putts, right? If he drives it well and he hits everything else well, he's going to have really good chances on 4 par 5s a day, right? I assume his bogey avoidance numbers are really, really high, but I don't have that in front of me. I think it just comes down to what you said. Do you want to play Scotty or Rory in a week with a big purse where a lot of people are going to use him, but is he going to win or is he going to finish 14th? And play well and be on coverage all weekend? I don't know. A couple names that you had said there, I think I'd completely toss Xander until he proves that he's back from.
Yeah, I wouldn't get in on him yet.
Shout out to Zach Place for using him last week in fantasy after he acknowledged he's played 18 holes in prep for Bay Hill last week. I'm really intrigued by Fleetwood, maybe because I just think like you can be inspired by somebody who has come close a number of times and has never broken through. And Fleetwood still has yet to win a tournament in North America, I believe. But has won some big, big tournaments. It's hard to say that somewhere like Sawgrass wouldn't fit what he does. I think we'd be remiss to not think that Morikawa could do what he did again. It's a place that feels like it should fit him really, really well. When you look at the people who played well last year at the Players, you've got Fitzpatrick, you've got Siwoo, you've got Hideki, you've got Ludwig, you've got Corey Connors, you've got Bezadenhout, you've got Sepp Straka, like guys that it feels like they're all very similar to what Colin Morikawa does. So I'd be shocked if he just falls off this week after having a really good ball striking week. I also think Sepp Straka is a good name this week, given how he's played the last couple months, coming off a really good week. This past week, like you had said, started poorly, battled himself all the way back to being a lot of coverage on Sunday.
But he's a dude who gets like insanely hot, it seems. Like, I don't know if there's numbers to back this up, but it feels like I've seen a bunch of times on coverage. It's like, oh, Sepp Straka's made 4 birdies in the last 6 holes.
Yep.
It just feels like he's the microwave. Like all of a sudden he's heated up and he's going to go for like an 8-hole stretch.
Yep. And another name that I would throw out there, I don't know that this is the right week for him, but he's going to win sometime soon. You're going to be like, oh yeah, that makes a ton of sense, is Will Zalatoris, who I think is coming off of either the best or the second best ball striking week. But another guy who just bled 4 or 5 strokes on the greens last week. At the end of the day,
his ball striking numbers the last 4 weeks have been flying up. He seems to have found that incredible ball striking that he had previously.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I mean, we watch this game. We try to learn from these guys on TV. We're in fantasy league together with it. At the end of the day, a lot of what you're doing is just how can I get the guys who hit the ball closest to the hole as often, right? So you kind of want to ride with these ball striker guys and hope that eventually the putter clicks for them. So.
Yeah, and TPC seems to be a place where you can't drive it like an idiot, obviously. But again, kind of reiterating the same point we've made, you don't have to hit it as far off the tee. And for the guys who are a little wild, like you take like a Wyndham Clark last year, who can get a little wild off the tee, because he doesn't have to get it so far down there, like he can dial it back and hit 3 woods and he's got like a driving iron that he likes. So like it brings some of those guys into play. A name that keeps jumping at me is Hideki. This feels like a place for him, and it's the same conversation we've been having for the last 30 minutes here. Can he figure out the putter for 4 days? Because he drives it well enough. He's not crazy long, but like drives it well enough, hits the shit out of his irons, and if he can make some putts, he's going to be in it.
Yeah, and I know he played, what was it, 4 or 5 weeks in a row, some absurd number during the stretch where he was playing well early in the year, which he's come off a little bit of a rest now. I know he's never won the Players. I know last year he played well in it. He was the leader, and I think did he break the course record, tie the course record? The COVID year when it got canceled after year one.
Yeah, he shot like 62 or 63 that first day.
Yeah.
And I think it was wet that year, which is, I think it's pouring rain there today. So I think the course is getting just drenched and softened up. So that was another thing that kind of piqued my interest.
He's one of the more frustrating guys, I think, to talk about and for us to pick, because he feels, when you don't have him, you're horrified that those stats you just popped up for Sepp Straka are with Hideki. Like, oh, Hideki's birdied 5 of his last 6 holes, and he's got 8 feet for birdie for another one here, and you're like, holy cow. But when you have him, it feels like there's so many times where you're like, is this guy hurt? Like, he's hurt so many times and then healthy the next week. Like, is he going to withdraw after 22 holes because of something, right? Like, he's a hard guy to kind of peg. Scary to not have on a week where he's got it. And this is obviously a place where he hits it fairly long. He hits it straight. He stands over every putt, and you feel like they're going in, and they just burn edges. And that's an uncomfortable seat to be in when you're rooting against him.
He is the ultimate, maybe not ultimate, because I think your guy might be the ultimate in this. Of you're looking at like the tracker on the PGA Tour app, and you're like, oh, birdie putt from 8 feet. Oh, birdie putt from 12 feet. Oh, birdie putt from 7 feet. Even par.
Yep.
I think your guy Luke List is still the tops in that, but Hideki is like one of those guys that you're like, oh, you look back at the round and you're like, how did you not shoot 68? You shot 70, but like, how was it not 68 or 67?
Right. Yeah, there's no, and again, it goes back to just opportunities, right? Like, if you consistently hit the ball well, specifically with your irons, and you're just not a total clown off the tee, which a lot of these guys aren't. You mentioned Wyndham being able to tone it down a little bit and dial it back and hit more fairways, but still hitting it long with irons and stuff like that. I mean, that was the Tiger Woods recipe for a number of years. I hit it further than you guys. You're all hitting drivers to where I'm hitting 5-wood or I'm hitting stinger low irons. I'm going to hit more fairways, and then we're in the same spot, and I'm better than you, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Gary Woodland won a major doing that, right?
Yep.
Like, he won a major just dialing it back at Pebble Beach and just hitting his irons better than everybody else that week, right? So there's definitely an advantage to those guys who hit it a long way and can dial it back. And it probably doesn't get talked enough about at places like this stretch of the PGA Tour schedule, because you do have so many holes where people are hitting it to the same spot, but they're hitting different clubs to that spot.
Yep.
Right. And I think it's one of the reasons why we all think like Cam Young at some point is going to break through. And because those guys just hit their long irons so well that they can hit them to the same place that everybody else hits 3-wood. Right.
Yep. Two names. I think we can probably wrap up on this unless you got something afterwards, but 2 names that they're way down the leaderboard. I wouldn't play them as picks to win, but like top 10s or maybe like a good performance. Daniel Berger and Tom Kim. I think Tom Kim, because he's not a long hitter, so like this kind of pulls everybody back to him. And then Daniel Berger, again, not a longer hitter, but like pretty good iron player, putts the shit out of it. It's a crafty little short game. I'm just, if you got like a top 10 play that you can throw on those two, and maybe even parlay them together, I might throw a few shekels towards that.
Yeah, I would tend to side with Berger first. Florida kid, has played really well. There's rumors that he got sick in the middle of last week when he was in contention halfway through that tournament, before kind of just disappearing. Reminding me a little bit of Ludwig, the first time at Torrey Pines. I don't know that I agree with what you're saying about Tom Kim. I don't know that the driving numbers have been good recently, which I think is where his issues have come in. Like if you don't hit it long and he doesn't hit it long and you're meant to be that straight guy who hits it well, the minute you don't hit it straight, you're in big trouble. And I think the
Yep.
numbers recently say that's where his issues have come. But he's another guy. If he's in contention on Sunday, he's not going to be. I mean, he's best friends with Scotty Scheffler. Certainly wouldn't be against going head to head with him. And I forget what tournament. Maybe it was Travelers last year. He went head to head with Scotty for a number of holes. Maybe even into a playoff. Was that Travelers?
Was that the playoff with the protest?
Storm of the Green, the protest. Yeah. So he's not going to, if he gets in contention, he's not going to be afraid of any of those big guys. Yep. But it does seem like something's a touch off when he's not on the simulator for TGL. Right?
You got any TGL thoughts?
No, I'll give you my 30-second elevator pitch that I've given everybody who's asked me. I think it's great second television.
Yep.
I think when it's on in the afternoon, I can put it on my third screen and just kind of listen to it in the background, and it's good to be there. If the basketball game I'm watching at night is no good and becomes a blowout or is just ugly, like it's good to have that to flip to. I don't know that they've gotten it to the point where it's like, oh, like this is going to be my every Monday and Tuesday night viewing. But it's fine. They've done a good job.
Yeah, that's kind of where I stand. It's fine. If I got nothing else going on and there's nothing on TV, it's fine background noise. Yep. Let's do a little college basketball here. Championship week. I got to get your thoughts. I know we've exchanged some thoughts on my Tar Heels here. They gave Duke about a good 28 minutes on Saturday. Yeah. Probably mostly due to the fact that Cooper Flagg was on the bench for like 15 of those 28.
Yeah.
But just give me your quick breakdown of the Heels.
I think they're like many of these blue bloods who aren't doing blue blood things this year. I think in any game they could beat anybody. And when I say beat anybody, I really mean anybody that's not Auburn or Duke. I think as we talk more about college basketball, I think that those are the two teams, and it's going to take a monumental effort as well as them not playing up to their best for either of those two to really get beat by much of the field come the NCAA tournament. But I think Carolina's on the bottom part of that next 45 that is on any given night. They're finally healthy, it feels like. They're playing better. They can beat anybody in one game, but unfortunately that's not the tournament, and it's not putting together a resume. And it does feel like they've lost a little bit of steam from that good run that they were on that kind of got them into we got to put the Heels in the tournament discussion. And I think they're going to probably need a good week this week in the ACC tournament.
Yeah, they might have to beat Duke, it looks like, to get there, because they're the 5, so they'll get the winner of one of those early shit teams, because the ACC is so bad. And then they'll have to get by the 4. Too. So, yeah, go for it. Just go there.
Well, I think Clemson's really, really good. The name doesn't pop the way others pop. I think there's a really good chance that come the NCAA tournament, they're kind of that team that everybody's like, oh, well, the ACC stinks. The ACC stinks. Who cares that they're 25-6 or whatever they are? 24-5, it appears, it looks like, on the top 25 lists that I have pulled up. But they're good, and they made a run last year. They brought everybody back from that team. They're one of the teams that did beat Duke this year. I know it was a little bit of a good spot for them to play Duke in, but they did it. And I think they have a chance to be one of the teams come the tournament. As long as things don't get real wonky in their pod or their bracket, I think there's a chance that we go, how did Clemson just go to like 2 straight NCAA tournament runs like they did last year?
Yeah, and they're on the opposite side of Duke in the ACC bracket, so lines up well for them to get there. So I don't think the ACC tournament's going to be appointment viewing for anybody unless they're one of your teams. What are the better conference tournaments to be on the lookout for here? I mean, I think I know where you're going with the top 2 here, but I'll let you go.
I think the SEC tournament's obviously going to be good. I have a fairly strong take on the SEC in that I'm not sure that the whole league is as good as everybody makes it out to be. I just think that the majority of the league is better than a lot of the other teams. And I think there's a chance that leads to 2 things. Number one, I think you could see anybody beat anybody in this SEC tournament. And I think for the best teams, that might even be a good thing. I don't know that some of those top teams need to play 3 or 4 complete all-out brawls against each other the week before they go play the one that actually matters. I think Auburn has proven that they're the best team in the league. I think there's Alabama and Tennessee both at times look like they're just as good as Auburn, but whether it's Tennessee not scoring enough in one game or it's Auburn not being able to, or Alabama not being able to guard us at times throughout the year. Both of them are in that next tier, but then you've got really like 6 or 8 other teams that on any given night, I mean, looking at you've got Kentucky's, you've got Missouri's, you've got Texas A&M's, you've got Mississippi State's, you've got Arkansas now playing better. It feels like on any given night, any of those teams could beat any of the others. And I think there's a chance that conversely, the ACC getting that we're really bad. Everyone's saying the SEC is really good. I think you might see some of those SEC teams struggle in the NCAA tournament just because of that.
What do you think? Big 12, Big 10 tournament? Any thoughts there? I mean, those are kind of the next best. Fighting for the next best conference discussion.
Yeah, I think Tom Izzo's done a remarkable job at Michigan State, obviously.
Yeah, a team that at the start of the year didn't feel like they were going to be very good, didn't really start out well, and then all of a sudden they win the Big Ten and they're the number 1 seed in that tournament.
Yeah, it's been really – it's hard to almost trust what they've done because you keep looking at the results and you're like, huh? And maybe it's just that I watch the Big Ten games and – I've seen so many bad ones off the top of my head that I'm like, oh my God, like whether I'm watching Nebraska play somebody or I'm watching Ohio State play Northwestern, who was supposed to stink and they scored 40 something points, or there's just so many games in there that have me questioning the league. I've seen Illinois look like they could beat anybody. I've seen Illinois look like they shouldn't be in the NCAA tournament. I've seen UCLA, same thing. Like if they fly across the country and play somebody the first time, they look awful. And then 2 days later, they beat somebody better because they didn't have to fly back and forth again. Like the Big Ten's very interesting to me. And I think it's a testament to Tom Izzo that Michigan State's done what they've done. Michigan has kind of leaked a ton of oil. It felt like they were doing a little bit of like the Chiefs thing, where they were just getting by, beating people at the buzzer on half-court shots by 1 or 2, and then they'd get throttled by 25. You're like, that was the outlier. I'm not sold that those are the outliers anymore. It feels like when everything doesn't click for them, they lose. And they lose fairly easily in some of those games. The Big 12, it's hard.
Before we leave the Big 10, you mentioned Michigan leaking oil, a team that really leaked oil coming down the stretch. Wisconsin.
Oh, and Wisconsin. Yeah.
Nebraska too, but yeah, Wisconsin definitely needs to show more of the beach. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what they were doing because they were a team. They looked good. I mean, got up into the top 10. They're scoring a bunch of points this year, and then all of a sudden they just can't win a game coming down the stretch.
Well, and I guess I forgot about that one, but they played somebody where they scored like 99 points. And I was like, what Wisconsin team is this? And apparently that was normal. And then for the last 2 or 3 weeks, it's just, you look and the results are just not there. And again, it becomes a really hard, like, it's why I think at my core, it's Auburn, it's Duke. And then it's a couple teams that can beat those two by playing well and not needing them to play as bad. Mm-hmm. But like, half of this Big Ten, half of this SEC, the best teams in the Big East are all in this next group of 40 teams that it feels like on any given night could beat anybody. And that's what I think makes for a fun tournament. Mm-hmm. Is that as long as those best teams win, then all the other games, like the 6 versus 11 games and the 8-9 games should be awesome.
I was going to say, makes for an awesome first weekend, but if you get some weird results, it leads to a weird second weekend sometimes.
Yeah. No, there's no doubt about that.
I think the other big ones we got to talk, Big 12, you want to touch on how you feeling V's up? Villanova, Big East, they got a chance to make a run, get themselves into the tournament? Your guy, Kyle Neptune?
Full transparency, I have not watched a single play since they lost to Columbia. They're in a full-on boycott. I'm so much happier in life because I don't subject myself to them. My full thoughts in about 15 seconds are, I just don't understand how you can consistently miss the tournament while also getting older. Their three best players are grad student, senior. Two of them transfers. How do you miss the tournament and get older? They're all going to be gone next year. Hopefully he's gone too. And nobody's played behind them. So unless somebody else brings in 9 new guys and you hope they mesh, we're back to square one. I don't know. I don't think Villanova fits this get the transfers thing. I was having a discussion with somebody yesterday where Villanova has done nothing the last 3 years that says that they should spend their NIL money to get the best players, because the best players aren't going to go there, which makes it feel like you then are spending more money to get the not top players who aren't good enough to beat the teams that have the top players. And that cycle is just going to repetitively get you on the bubble and in the NIT. And we'll always be able to talk about 2016 and 2018. But hand up, I said 5 or 10 years ago that I wasn't going to take those years for granted. I fully took those years for granted.
You always do. It's always easy to be in the moment. And you said something we're not getting into today. It's a whole other discussion, but it's the teams that aren't going to get the big NIL money guys. And it's a reshaping of like the college basketball and the college football landscape. And sometimes those two programs at the same school are going to have a completely different outlook on it and like feel. So that's a whole discussion there that is just a good point to make, but not enough time for us to delve into that today. But
Big East tournament's always one of the most fun ones, right? Big East Saturday night is always awesome.
It's funny. The Big East used to be like one of the only Saturday night conference finals for the longest time. It felt like growing up. Because like the ACC, the Big 12, the Big 10 were all Sunday. The ACC's moved into Saturday. I think the Big 10's still on Sunday. But like,
I think the Big East has moved up on Saturday as a result. I want to say they now play at like 5 or 6.
Okay.
I think. I could be wrong. But I think that'll be a good tournament because you got some of those teams fighting for seeding, fighting for their lives. Xavier being one that comes to mind of like they need a good showing. They can't completely crap the bed this week. UConn, who, again, on any given day, do you believe that Dan Hurley's going to get smoked by somebody in the NCAA tournament? Probably not if they figure it out, right? St. John's is trying to stay hot going in. Creighton
what a job by Rick Pitino.
What a job.
I mean, he had that viral video going around earlier a couple weeks ago. That was awesome. Like, first dude to ever win 5 conference championships at different school, a conference championship at 5 different schools, rather.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
The dude can just fucking coach.
Can just coach. And again, we're probably underappreciating him a little bit while he's there doing it. And
had he, I think the reason he gets underappreciated is because he's bounced around so much.
Mm-hmm.
Had he just,
and some of that being his own doing.
Oh yeah, for sure. Had he been able to just stay at Louisville, I think. How long he's been gone from Louisville? What, 7-8 years now? Maybe.
No, it's got to be more than that, right? It had to be like mid 2010s, probably almost 10 years by now, right?
Either way,
2014 was the final, was the vacated title.
Let's see here. Let's see when he was last at Louisville. He left Louisville in 2017.
Oh, so it's not quite as 8 years.
8 years. I mean, still a while. But had he been at Louisville the last 8 years, still, you'd have to imagine they'd still be a pretty solid program. And I think people's thoughts of him would be a little different. And also, he's done it to himself plenty at the same time. So,
no doubt.
We didn't talk about Big 12 at all yet. So, Big 12, what do you like down there?
I think Houston's really good. I think Texas Tech's really good. I think that next group of teams is like...
Oh, sorry, Texas Tech. I had this weird thought the other day. Do you remember the left-handed shooting, the left-handed point guard from Texas Tech, probably from like...
AC Law.
Yep. I went through that stretch in my head. I was watching a Texas Tech game because they have that giant Texas Tech logo in the middle.
Yep.
And I can vividly remember this game of, I think it went into overtime, of AC Law hitting a 3, like standing on the edge of the Texas Tech logo. You know, this was probably 20 years ago when dudes didn't shoot threes from there. So, sorry, quick aside. I'm glad you remembered him as well.
You mentioned AC Law. I think AC Law was the fourth, if I remember correctly.
I think so, yeah.
And they have a guy now, Wade Taylor, who I believe is also the fourth. And when you talk about guys, I know this is not the Big 12. This is the old Big 12. But when you talk about guys who have a chance to put a team on their back for 3 weeks that it takes to win the national title, Wade Taylor, the fourth, might be one of those guys. But they're in the SEC now, dealing with all those other really good teams there. But
I don't know how we got on this rant when we were talking about the Big 12, but my bad.
Well,
I diverted us.
Conference realignment has really done it to all of us. I can't even look at the top 25 that I have next to me without oh wait, we didn't even talk about Maryland, who's been awesome
because they're in the Big 10.
Because they're in the Big 10, right? But it's hard to say Houston isn't the best team in the Big 12. What Kelvin Sampson's done there has been unbelievable the last.
Oh, that's how I got there. You said Texas Tech, and I was thinking Texas A&M.
Yeah,
sorry.
And Texas
there we
Tech,
go.
Grant McCaslin's done an awesome job there since coming over from North Texas, I believe it was. They feel like they play a way that can beat anybody on any given day. I think it's JT Toppin, who's their guy, really good player. And then the next group, I keep saying it, but it does kind of feel, and maybe the one place where I disagree a little bit on what you said about having the upsets ruin the second weekend, which I completely agree with, is that I think the pool of that next tier is deeper, which means that I think there's less likely that if you see a 10 seed beat a 7 seed, that they get blown out the next week by the 2 seed, because I think the difference between team 20 and the difference between 30 or 40 is not very much. A lot of these teams fit in there. Iowa State has been awesome at times. They've looked terrible when they've been injured. They got a bunch of guys back last weekend, and they kicked the crap out of, was it Arizona, I think, at home? But then they come out and lose to BYU, who at times looks awesome and who at times doesn't look great. And it feels like there's a number of those teams that they're going to be hard to pick in the tournament. And St. Mary's, we're not going to get to the West Coast, but St. Mary's is another one. They've killed Gonzaga twice, first time ever. That could be a good final if we get Gonzaga, St. Mary's 3.0. But they get to the NCAA tournament, what do you do with St. Mary's? They kind of play slower, but they run really good offense, and it leaves you susceptible to getting beat by a team who gets hot because there's not enough possessions, but they're really good, and they've been good the whole year. And yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's all I wanted to talk about today. I mean, nice rundown with college basketball. I've gotten to a point in my life where I'm not watching as much. I've started watching more the last couple weeks here. It's just kind of how it's turned for me, is that I'm the dude I always used to think, how did you only start watching college basketball when it's March? And I've become that guy. And I'll all of a sudden just be tuning in and trying to figure all these guys out. So it was a nice rundown. Just give me, your top. You've mentioned a couple of times, there's a couple of teams and then there's everybody else. So who are those couple of teams in your opinion?
I think it's Auburn and Duke. It would shock me. They're not going to obviously be in the same quadrant. They'll both be 1 seeds. I hope they're on opposite sides of the bracket. If they were both to get all the way to the final, that game, which was won by Duke the first time, although I believe at Cameron in maybe the SEC, ACC challenge, that would be an awesome next one. I think that next group of teams that, hey, if we play well and they're just a touch off their game, we can win, probably includes Houston. It probably includes Alabama. It probably includes Florida, who we never touched on during any of this. And it might dip as far down to Texas Tech, maybe Clemson. I like Clemson, but that's probably, I think, the list. I think if for Auburn or Duke to lose to someone that's not those teams, I think you're going to have to see significant shooting differentials. One team's going to have to scorch you from 3. The other's going to have an off day, and just some tournament stuff to happen, which is very possible, right? It's one of the most volatile things out there. But it does feel to me a little bit like the year where Baylor played Gonzaga. They were the 2 best teams all year. They ended up in the final, and they gave us a great final. No, they didn't give us a great final.
No, that was trash.
Then Gonzaga got killed.
Because you kept telling us to double down on Gonzaga, and we were like, no, Baylor's killing them.
Gonzaga's Final Four game against UCLA was awesome. That was the Jalen Suggs.
Yeah, the title game was dog shit. Because you were like, we gotta in game Gonzaga. We're all like, no,
they're gonna come back. They're gonna come back, and it never came back.
They never came back.
It does feel a little bit like that. Where like for the whole year, we all were like, well, they're the two best teams, and there's a chance that that's the same again. So I would, if you gave me Gonzaga, Duke or Auburn versus the field, I think I would take one of those two and see what happened.
I mean, if you can get that at the end of if you get a crazy, first couple weekends and it finishes up with Duke and Auburn in the final, I mean, that's the ideal tournament. Is you get the wildness, but you get your dudes at the end. That's what you're looking for.
That's what you want, right? And ideally, if you can get some of those upset teams who sneak through to keep playing well and make those games close. The last thing you want is like a 14 seed into the Sweet 16 and then they lose by 30.
Yeah.
Like that's not great viewing, especially if it's in one of those early slots where there's no other game on.
There's no other game on.
But the only other two teams I would mention before we go, Drake, really, 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 really good team out of the Missouri.
I was watching a little bit of their game yesterday.
The new coach, Ben McCollum, came from Northwest Missouri State. He's brought 4 Division II guys with him. They all play significant minutes, including his 2 best players. Really cool story. Play at snail's pace, like think Virginia when they were really good, which is kind of scary for them in an NCAA tournament because if you don't start hot, it feels like you can't come back when you're playing at that pace. The other one who I'm sure nobody's watched, and I can't say I've watched a ton of, but they've happened to be on ESPN Plus late at night when I'm unable to fall asleep and have the ability to put games on. UC San Diego is awesome out on the West Coast. They're in talks to potentially get an at-large if they were to not win their league. Not only are they like 27-3 or something like that, they're also like 25-4 against the spread or some absurd number. From that standpoint, they're really good out there.
Let's make a note on that for next week.
But yeah, they're two kind of. I'm sure when you watch the selection show on Sunday, they're gonna tell you the same things I just told you. I'm not reinventing the wheel by any means, but we'll get it on Old Walls House first.
Yeah, you heard it here first. Jeff, good stuff this week. Schedule dependent. I'm hoping you'll be back next week. The annual pick every game starts next week. So
we've been better than people think, if I remember correctly, by the statistics.
We did pretty well last year. I think we would have, if there was actual cash behind it, we would have made money last year. So
doing it for the people listening. That's
all for the fans of OWH. So
that's right.
Jeff, unless you got anything else, we'll call it a day here and hopefully see you again next week.
Yeah, absolutely.
Time for some passing thoughts. Passing thoughts is going to cover a little bit of everything today. We'll start quickly with the Flyers. They stink. They lose 4 games since we last spoke. Just bad. It's just bad, man. They stink. Big Meech, 20 goals for the rookie. Shoot, I had a little screenshot for that. Where was it? I've lost it. Oh, he's the first rookie to 20 goals this year. That's what it is. First rookie to 20 goals this year. So Big Meech, a couple of trades here this past week. They were dealing, kind of blowing it up. They play tonight. They play Thursday. They play Saturday. They're probably going to lose 2 or 3. It's the Sens, the Lightning, and the Hurricanes. I mean, good Lord. They're just so bad. It's like we're on the next year. We're on the next year. That's all I got for you. That's all I got. UNC. We talked a little bit with Jeff. They gave Duke a run for about a quarter and a half. But there are just large portions where they just would dribble around for 20 seconds, and then someone has to hoist up a step back 3. It's just not sustainable. I don't know what the instructions were from the bench on the offense. I mean, I'm not a guy that's like, you have to have a set offense and you got to run it. You got to run it every time. Like, yeah, today's world, your players need some freedom to do things, but whatever that is, it's not working. They They actually held the lead in the second half by 5 or 6 after being down 1 at halftime. And so, I mean, they got outscored by 12 points in the second half. Somewhere around like the 12-minute mark, they must have gotten outscored by, I don't know. If it was 39-27, it was probably like 15-9 in the second half. So, 24-12 on the way home. RJ Davis gave him all the points. Everything else kind of from other places. Van Allen Lubin had 11, 7 from Withers, 7 from Cadeau, 7 from Trimble, 8 from Jackson. Like, there just was no good second option, really. It wasn't great. It wasn't great. Let's just talk a little football here. Been pretty active day today. DK Metcalf going to the Steelers. Nate Hobbs getting picked up by my Packers. He got 4 years and $48 million, $16 million guaranteed. So he's a cornerback, a little secondary help. Jags brought in a lineman. Jets get a corner and Brandon Stevens. Raiders grabbed Jeremy Chin at safety. The Commanders traded for Laramie Tunsil. A little extra support on the line for Jaden Daniels. He cost them a 3rd and a 7th in 2025 and a 2nd and a 4th in 2026. But it was a 2025 4th comes back to him as well. Packers also signed Aaron Banks. He spent the first 4 years with the 49ers and last year was graded the 33rd best guard in the league by Pro Football Focus. So a middle of the road guy, just perfect for the Packers. I mean, 32 teams, 2 guards on each, 64 guards, starting guards, and we grabbed him right in the middle. 4 years, $77 million for him. Oh, gosh, what else we got in here? Jags add another offensive lineman. Bears add some offensive linemen. Devontae went to the Rams. Just scrolling through here, all the different things. Josh Allen got the bag. An additional 5 years, $330 million. Saquon got paid. Justin Fields to the Jets. So that fuels the Packers. That fuels Rodgers to the Steelers rumor. So it feels like it's down to 3 teams for Rodgers, the Giants, the Steelers, and the Vikings. Because Sam Darnold's out of town. He's out to Seattle after they had traded Geno. So a lot going on there. I'm just still scrolling through all the stuff here. Packers did say they were not going to trade Jair Alexander, so that was awesome. Just looking, see if there's anything else. Jimmy Garoppolo, 1-year extension. Yeah, 5 hours ago, Aaron Rodgers is close to joining the Steelers. Rumor is unconfirmed. Blah 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 blah. Texans, Braxton Berrios, Javon Kinlaw to the Commanders. 3 years, $45 million. Nice. Chris Godwin back to the Bucks, so he's out for the Packers. Son Reddick, Tampa. Just a lot going on. A lot going on. Camille Mack resigns with the Chargers for 1 year. Just a lot happening. We'll look into that a little more in depth kind of coming up. We got draft stuff where we'll talk about changes and all sorts of things like that. Let me just scroll back through the picks, make sure I don't miss anything. This was a good one. The CBS college basketball theme is objectively better than any Beatles song ever. I'm kind of on record. It started as a joke for me that the Beatles are overrated. It might be real to me. Jimmy Johnson is going to be retiring from Fox Sports, so good luck in retirement to Jimmy. Losing one of the best there. Chase DeLauder for Cleveland is out 8 to 12 weeks. He has a sports hernia. That's awesome. Just awesome. He's supposed to be one of the guys. Oh, I forgot Myles Garrett reached an extension. He's getting $40 million per year. Oh, it was 6 years, $330 million extension for the Bills. Metcalf, yada, yada, yada. So yeah, here's another good one I saw online. It says, in college, we named our intramural softball team No Game Scheduled because if the other team didn't show up, they lost their league deposit and forfeited. It worked several times. Everyone hated us and nothing as cool as that has happened to me since. That's actually pretty funny. that person had to have gone to a big school because you wouldn't get away with that at a little school. Like it wouldn't last. You might get one person, but the jig would be up real quick if you went to not like a major school, like a Penn State, an Alabama, someplace huge like that. So I was doing some traveling this week. I'm in a hotel, and about 5:45, and I think I was slated to get up at 6. It's like 65 degrees out. I'm going to be grilling some hot dogs any second now. A little beer in the grill. Can't wait. That's what I'm most excited about today. 65 degrees, going to fire up the grill, have a beer, make some wieners. Doesn't get much better than that. Where was I? Oh, traveling. I'm supposed to get up about 6 o'clock. About 5:45, I hear like a car horn start going off outside. And it's not like the panic button has been hit. So it's not just like, It's going off randomly, like someone keeps hitting the lock button. This continued for like 30 minutes, maybe. On and off. No real rhyme or reason to when it was going to happen. Like it happened for like 30 seconds where it was, again, no like regular intervals. And then like 3 minutes would pass and it'd start. And it'd last for like 45 seconds. And then like 1 minute would pass. And then it'd last for like 15. And then like 5 minutes would pass. It was the weirdest thing ever. And I was like looking out my window occasionally, and it was directly under my, like if you looked out and down, that was that car. It was really weird. It was one of the weirdest things I've ever had happen to me. Driving home that day or that week, that trip, whatever it was. It gets to a point where I've got to piss. And I need gas. So I'm like, all right, whatever. Exit coming up. I can kind of see like the gas station out ahead because there's nothing worse than getting off like, oh, gas station is 2 miles. So I'm like, oh, this is a good spot for me. See the first gas station. I'm like, this is a little bit of a shitty gas station. I'm like, and there's nobody here. Like, I never loved that. And I pull in and all the gas pumps are off and all the lights are off. I'm like, okay, maybe it's just a shitty station. They're closed. So I see, I don't know, a 1/10 of a mile down the street, I see a Casey's. I'm like, okay, we'll just go there. And then as I'm getting there, I'm like looking, there's a stoplight ahead of me, but it's a flashing red stoplight. Like, there's just a one light, but it's not flashing. And I pull in, I see like pieces of paper up in the window, and you could tell something's handwritten on them. It says power outage closed, hopefully open back at 3:45 in the morning. So now there's that thing with like your body when your body realizes like, oh, we're about to go to the bathroom. I don't know if you guys have, but you get home, it's like, oh, all of a sudden now you got to piss or shit, and it's like 10 times worse. So now I've got to piss. It was pretty bad to begin with. Then my body was like, oh, we're about to piss. And now it's really bad. I don't know how I have to drive 10 more miles. I am about to piss my pants. I'm considering just pulling off on the edge of the highway and taking a piss along like Route 80 or whatever the fuck I'm on. And I'm like, I can make it. Pull in. I'm still trying to get gas first before I go in. And it's like, you have to go prepay inside. Like it's 1998. So I'm like, fuck it. At this point, I just go in, take a piss. Oh God. When you take a piss that you've been holding, Jesus, is that a great feeling. But yeah, then I had to prepay. Like it was 1998 or something. I'm in here prepaying for gas. Unbelievable. Where else were we at here? Oh, Buc-ee's. I stopped at a Buc-ee's again. I got some of their kettle corn and their fudge. Their kettle corn is fantastic. I'm a big fan of kettle corn. I feel like kettle corn is severely underrated. And I don't know. I just don't know why kettle corn isn't more of a thing. But their kettle corn is great. Their fudge is good. I love those Buc-ee's. I could try something new like 10 times in a row in there. Didn't do any food because I was going to dinner shortly after stopping, but next time I'm going to get deep into the food. I'll tell you what's really annoying. The Amazon Prime has ads now. I'm trying to watch Reacher, and I've got ads coming up like I'm watching it on regular TV. It's like, I already pay for Amazon Prime. Like Prime Video was like, oh, we'll throw it in. Now they're like, we'll throw it in. If you want no ads, you can pay $10 more. It's like, what the fuck? What the fuck, dickheads? Oh, my face. Can't really see it. It's kind of gotten a little better. My face has been getting annihilated by the wind from walking the dog. And I don't know if it's that, it's been cold up until like this weekend and today, again, 65. It's awesome. It's been cold. It's been windy. I wasn't walking the dog from October until, January when I finally started walking him. And my face was just beet red right here. Cause I got a sweatshirt on. Sometimes I get one of those I got a little pull up mask, the ones that go all the way around when it gets real cold. And I'm wearing sunglasses most of the time because it's bright out, bouncing off the snow. But just a strip right here was just beet red. Roommate turned me on a little face cream. Might be helping. And I think just the fact that I wasn't out walking the dog all year, like my skin didn't build up like a nice callus on it. But we're good now. It seems to be coming around. I was in the car. So I was in the car last week on what I figure it was a 36-hour trip. I did 18 car hours. So I'm going through everything I can listen to in 18 hours. And at some point, YouTube suggested I watch Bill Simmons and his Rewatchables podcast. And I ended up finding the podcast it was on. It was when he was talking about, it was right after the pandemic started back in 2020 and The Last Dance was out. So it found my algorithm and they were taking a Bulls game and then rewatching it and then talking about it on the pod like it was, real sport, like a real sporting event that had just happened. And they were like, not like it would just happen, but they were discussing it. It was filling content for him. So I'm in the hotel and I'm like, okay, I'll watch this. I got nothing else to do. So the only two notes I wrote, first of all, they were a lot of fun to watch. And Michael Jordan is incredible. So obviously that was sick. But one of the other things I watched was BJ Armstrong gets his shots up, which was just a wild thing. Maybe I thought I was going to write down more about it, but all I wrote was BJ Armstrong gets his shots up. I did also find it amazing, the difference in basketball from the first Bulls run to their second Bulls run, in the 96, 97, 98 with Rodman Bulls versus the 91, 92, 93 Bulls with Horace Grant. The game was played in a way better way in the 91, 92, 93. Those late 90 NBA times were weird. And you could tell the dudes were still dudes. And MJ had obviously lost a step compared to what he was before the baseball break. But it was interesting. The most absurd thing is that there's never a scoreboard on the screen. They just flash it on for 30 seconds, not even 30 seconds. Cause they will bring the ball up across half court. They'll start getting into something. They'll flash the scoreboard. And by the time someone's taking a shot, it's over. So it's like a 10-second scoreboard. So you have no idea what the score is. You have no idea what the time is. So if you have it on and you're doing anything but strictly watching the game, you lose context really quick. I kept watching them. And just when I was watching in my hotel room on it, it wasn't bad because at worst I'm just looking at my phone. But if I have it on around the house and I get distracted by the dog or if it's secondary noise for me and you look over, you're like, I have no context. Could you imagine? What did we do? You just flipped into a game and you're like, oh, this is cool. I hope they show the scoreboard soon so I know what the score is. Just wild times. Wild that they could figure out how to put it on there. But you had to make it so big for people to see it on those TVs that you couldn't just leave it up there. And it was funny. If you watch it on a computer screen or if you watch it on your phone screen, the clarity is not bad. But if you toss it to the TV or pull it up on YouTube on your TV and spread it out, the clarity gets real bad real quick. Obviously, a lot of that has to do with pulling it from YouTube and they've had to re-record it or whatever the hell you would call it. But yeah, those were kind of my big thoughts. And I'm going to end with this. Yesterday was the first day of daylight savings time. A lot of discussion about should we just stay in daylight savings time? Should we never go to daylight savings time? The people who say we should just stay in daylight savings time, so we like it to be later in the day, no matter what. Getting dark at 4:30 in the winter sucks. The people who state we should just stay on regular time state we don't want it dark at 8 a.m. in the middle of, at this time and in winter. because it didn't get light here until about 7:15. Like I got out for my walk with my dog about 6:50. So like it's light, but it's not like light. Now I've got a solution for everybody. We keep changing the clocks. That's the answer. Because yes, we do want it to be lighter later in the summer. That is 100% what I want. I live at the very start of a time zone. The worst thing about that is that it gets darker earlier. Like it's 8:30, it's pretty dark in Wisconsin. Whereas if you go to Michigan, it's like 9:30, 10 o'clock. But the flip side is it gets lighter earlier here. Now, all that said, I don't want it being dark at 8 a.m. either in the winter. So the solution we have going right now works. I'm going to die on that hill. Changing the clock is not that big a deal. Go to bed. Just go to bed an hour earlier if you're so worried about losing the time. Or just stay in bed an hour later. It's 1 hour. It's not a big deal. The Browns have just traded for Kenny Pickett. Okay. There we go. Daylight savings time, changing clocks. It's all fine. Let's go home. Closing time, everybody. Just want to say thank you to everyone. I appreciate all the support. So thank you to producer Kevy for helping us out, get on video for the first time and teaching me how to do this. Don't forget to check out MJ and the Full Range podcast. You can find a Full Range at Spotify and on the Ole Walls House YouTube page. We are back next week. Next week is probably my favorite pod of the year. NCAA tournament. Selection Sunday is Sunday. So we're going to be picking every single game of the NCAA tournament. I think Jeff's in. We'll see who rounds out in that third spot. Looking forward to that. It could be a rotating cast of characters this year. It's all dependent on schedules, but I'll be there. And if I have to do it myself, I'll do it myself. But hoping to have a couple other people there with me. So we'll figure it out one way or the other. So till next week, peace.